Me and Sil, Daisy, have been friends since high school, 15 years ago. I started dating her brother, Dan, when we were all in college. Daisy married Matt sometime after I married Dan 10 years ago. Matt and Daisy wanted a baby and starting trying right after marriage, but they were having a lot of trouble. I am talking multiple failed IVFs, multiple late-term miscarriages, one of which was a stillbirth. The struggle went on for 7 years. I have helped her immensely through everything, financially and emotionally. Matt is unsympathetic sometimes. He behaves as if it's a batch of bad cookies and immediately guilts her into trying again. So, it always was up me and Dan to take care of her. Despite many talks from me and Dan, she remained married to him and kept trying again and again. We have had many offers to leave the state / country for a better job, but didn't because we were scared to leave her alone. 3 years ago, I got pregnant. We broke the news gently to Daisy one day. She got real quiet and then asked us to leave. Later, she sent me an email saying she doesn't want to see me or Dan anymore and that this is all too much. We tried to console her but didn't work, so gave her space. 2 weeks before I was supposed to give birth, Dan passed away in an accident. I don't have any family except for Dan and Daisy. Daisy refused to attend the funeral because she will have to see me the day before the funeral, and I called her and begged her to come. I didn't think that I would be able to go through that without her. She hung up on me and didn't attend the service. Soon after that, I gave birth and I decided to move to another state. I cut off all contact with Daisy and started fresh. Now, me and my daughter are very happy and we are enjoying a comfortable life. She attempted to contact me once I moved away, but I ignored her. 2 weeks ago, she called from an unknown number and said she desperately wanted to talk to me. Turns out she finally got pregnant, had a baby boy who passed away 5 days after being born in NICU. Matt is also leaving her and screwed her over because of the prenup. She is basically broke and homeless days after losing a child. I just said okay. She then asked, "Are you really not going to say anything? You are really not going to help?" I pretty much said, "I don't care about you. I don't care about your life. I don't care about Matt. I don't care that your baby died. Just leave me and my daughter alone." And then hung up. Since then she has been sending me multiple emails and VMs stating how awful I am and how heartless and how much Dan would be disappointed. I continue to just ignore everything. I am not going to have any sympathy or help her in any way. My brother lost his job along with all his savings several months ago, and soon after he asked me if it would be okay if he and his wife stayed with me until they could afford their own place again. I hesitated at first, considering I only have a 1-bedroom apartment, but according to them they had no other options, so of course I invited them over and bought a blow-up mattress for the living room. For the first month things were manageable, although admittedly cramped. Then my brother told me that sleeping on the mattress was giving him back pains. So he asked if he could buy a small double bed for the living room. The living room is by far the biggest room I have, so I told him that would be fine as long as there was still room for my couch, TV, bookshelves. The living room is also connected to my kitchen in an open plan style. So I reminded my brother to leave walking space around the bed. It's now been 2 months and things have gotten a lot worse. When they first moved in, I would still use the living room every day to unwind on the couch after work. Now whenever I go in, there's a strange vibe like I'm intruding. My brother and his wife are often sitting in bed together when I go in. I always knock and stare at me pointedly until I leave. Sometimes when I sit down they will directly ask me for some alone time and say they would like the room to themselves. This came to a head yesterday when my sister-in-law messaged me with a timetable she'd made of when it would be a good time for me to use the living room. The timetable basically says that they will allow me into the room for an hour each evening, plus 20 minutes around meal times. I basically shut her down instantly and told her there was no way I'd be following the timetable since in the end it's my apartment. She sent me back a huge message with a dozen paragraphs about how my constant presence was ruining her marriage with my brother and they feel like they have no privacy. I tried to talk this over with my brother that night, but when I got home neither my brother //Sil were talking to me. So he's clearly just as pissed. Today an Amazon parcel arrived for my brother with a lock for the living room door, which I told him there's absolutely no way I will allow him to install. My brother says I'm creepy for wanting constant access to where they sleep, and he's insisting on installing the lock anyway. I live with my parents and my brother. It's always been a dream of my parents to adopt me and bro, our bio kids. And they had come to the decision that they want to adopt an older kid. They got matched with Jess, who is 13. Due to the current situation, she is not living with us, but we've met before and she spent a weekend with us in January. Jess, despite sometimes being sweet and kind, is very high maintenance and has a lot of anxiety and anger problems. She can go from 0 to 1,000 really quick. During her stay, she got triggered by something when we were in public. She and I went to a clothes shop and my parents were in a cafe nearby. Some guy accidentally grabbed her by her shoulder as he thought she was his daughter, and he apologized immediately and started screaming. I was the only person there, and I tried to calm her down, but she ran off. She was found, shaken, but safe, an hour later. I then got grounded as I had failed in being responsible for my sister. I said I didn't have a sister. My parents were angry about this and said that how dare I be rude about her. Don't I know how much she's been through? She's had other outbursts, but none so huge in public. She can be cold and untrusting and was very clingy to my parents. I do admire her and think she's very brave, but I don't want to live with her. My parents call Jess often. I often say hi and try to be civil and supportive. But it seems like the only thing my parents can talk about is Jess and how brave she is, and she isn't even here yet. We live in a 3-bedroom house, and my parents promised to move to a bigger one later this year. Recently, my parents broke the news to me that Jess will move into my room, and I can pick whether I want to share a room with bro or Jess. I don't want to share with either. My brother is messy, loud, and is your average 9-year-old boy, and Jess has night terrors and screams the house down. And it's enough having to open my house to her, but I value my privacy a lot and don't want her in my room, which is like my special place. I was crushed. I asked if we were still moving, and my parents were like, "We like this place and have no solid plan." I freaked out and was like, "You guys are forgetting you have another daughter and are too excited about the shiny new one to remember that the one you have has feelings and boundaries, and if you're changing everything I've ever known, at least I deserve to be listened to. If this is how life's going to be, I don't want to have a sister." Good to note, my room is big enough to have a wall put in, and my parents considered it a few years back. I would be happy with that. They refuse, even though we can easily afford it, because it is too much effort. My parents are offended that I'm not being welcoming towards my sister. And I'm offended that the life I knew is going to be turned upside down, and I'm not going to have the thing I value most, my privacy. My best friend and I are quarantining at our apartment together. She's trans and has had trouble growing her hair out, so she wears wigs. She has some really cute ones in other colors that she wears for fun and stuff. But she has a standard everyday wig she wears most of the time. Lola never got the traditional girly childhood, so we've been making one for her in quarantine. We built a fort in the living room, have been making friendship bracelets, playing summer camp-style games. It's a lot of fun. Last week, Lola mentioned to me that she wanted to start a quarantine diary so that she could document her experiences for future generations. I actually thought it was really cool, and then we got on the topic of journaling and I told her about my first diary. One of those flismy lock diaries that every girl had as a kid. We bought matching ones as part of our Give Lola Her Childhood Back crusade. They took a little while coming in, but we got them on Friday. Saturday night, some of our friends from college decided to do an impromptu girls' night in. Lola was in the shower, so I answered the Zoom without her. Lola is not out to anybody at our college, and I respect that. This is her fresh start and she has a right to decide when she wants to come out to these people, if at all. I know I wouldn't 100% trust some of the people at our school with something as personal as this. We were talking about what we've been doing in quarantine and I mentioned that we had gotten the diaries. I said it was for the nostalgia and they wanted to see the diaries. We left the box in Lola's room, so I went in to show them. Lola and I go into each other's rooms all the time. We're basically sisters to one another, and it's just about second nature. When we were younger, we had keys to each other's houses. I didn't think anything of it. I flipped the camera to show the diaries and didn't flip it back. I got distracted by a cute choker on her dresser and forgot that the camera was flipped back / there was anything to hide. They knew Lola has worn wigs out to parties / the club / etc., but her everyday wig was right out in plain view, and one of our nosier friends asked what the new wig was. I completely blue-screened and someone else realized that it was Lola's hair. I genuinely had nothing to say. They were asking why Lola wore a wig and I had no explanation. I didn't want to out her. Someone else came to the conclusion that Lola must have cancer or alopecia or some other horrible thing that causes hair loss. They've decided that she was just too embarrassed to say, and they all started going on about poor Lola, etc. I just didn't know what to say, and I said it wasn't my place to confirm / deny. I hung up and immediately told Lola. I apologized profusely, and I know how badly I feel so guilty about it. But, understandably, she's upset. Now, she's being forced to decide whether or not to out herself. Lola, understandably, doesn't want to lie about having some serious disease, and people are already trying to show support. At the same time, though, she doesn't want to have to come out. I don't know what to do. I want to support her, but she doesn't want to even see me right now.